And actually, you could stay here,
Okay.
and Katarina as well, because now we have a panel coming up where we will deep dive and take in questions from the audience. And I would also like to invite up Anna von Groningen from Green Mining. And you can start coming up on stage while you're starting. And first of all, I would like to tell a little bit about Anna, who is just joining us, and you will hear a keynote from her in a bit after our panel. But Anna von Groningen is a marketing and communication expert at Cointed, which is Europe's largest provider of crypto ATMs with focus on green Ethereum mining. Cointed also operates a crypto exchange platform and payment solutions for retailers. So some of the questions that we will be perhaps touching here will be about mining, even though we have not discussed it yet. So, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Very interesting. Thank you so much for your keynote speaks and the very concrete examples of how we can change the world with blockchain, really, here. So what really strikes me is the variety of applications of blockchain. You see anywhere where there's data management, blockchain could be a solution. I was even at the Digital Week forum today. Someone finished off their presentation with like, blockchain is a solution waiting for a problem to be solved. Excuse me if I am a bit provocative with some of these questions. I'm sure you will be able to answer them really great. Many of these services already exist. So why blockchain actually as opposed to other working technology? And what problem are we actually solving for the customer here? Who would like to start?
You want me to answer? Well, I think we are focusing a lot of time in what do we solve, but we do not realize what do we actually change. As a matter of fact, today, it is true that blockchain isn't really used with the most potential that it actually has as a technology. And still, the business model that we build on top of it, they fundamentally redefine the way market actors are interacting with each other. Yeah. So I think for an early stage technology, it might be efficient enough.
Yeah. Also, as you saw, I mean, we don't have problem with our electricity system. Do the lights go out at all in Sweden? When was the last time? No. Like in Germany, it was 10 or 12 years ago. We don't have a problem. We don't have pain. The customer doesn't ask for anything here. Although, if CO2 would be priced in, for example, right? If we have solar power prices dropping more and more, people are going to think about decentralized or their own power sources and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, then we will have a need of clean electricity at lower costs, which is going to be microtransactions, and then we're going to have a market pull for this technology. And actually, it's good that it's not there yet, because the technology itself is on training wheels, right? Based on scalability and so on and so forth. These are the things that we still need to solve. The biggest problem to embed it in the energy system for the energy users like us, or we might have been over it, but key management is a horrible thing. It doesn't really work. It's very hard, and you cannot just embed it into energy, and the people are just going to, oh, I forgot my phrases. Or as I showed in the developing countries in sub-Saharan Africa, where you have 80% illiteracy still, you need it to be very, very easy, the access, the usage, and so on and so forth. So there are problems coming up, and we can see those problems already. The customers don't see them yet, so they're not asking for it. But it's good, and we build it, and I hope it's going to be a good timing in 2 to 3 years.
I also really like the example that Katarina, that you brought up of the massive effect it can have in developing countries, reducing the costs of transactions in this way. So that's also very interesting. Do you have something?
Oh, I think they've already said
great.
it.
So the next question is, could you describe the barriers you see for blockchain implementation in the energy sector?
How much time do we have? I would say the biggest hurdle today for the energy sector is the regulatory aspect for now, because these are energy laws. There's not natural laws, so they can also change. We are still able to, if we define the right business model, if we talk to the right people, we can change also that regulatory aspect. But for now, it's one of the biggest hurdles because it's really giving very little space for innovation. Another hurdle that we tend to forget sometimes, to me, and it's one of the learning of the Conjoule project with Energy, is the client segmentation. When we build such a blockchain innovative based project, we think everyone is going to run to it and say, oh, super cool, I have an app, I have a web app, and it's a very attractive product. But you still have people that do not care about the energy source. They just want to press a button and they have light, and the rest is superficial and not important. So we need, when we build such a product, to be able to adapt to both of those clients and be able to segment the market really and with a clear definition. I think this is a hurdle that we do not see today because we do not have enough experience when we build really things. We are still in the proof of concept, in a small, comfortable pilot. When we have to scale and when we have to put more households in one project, then it looks a little bit different.
Yeah. That's actually why I left Siemens and went into having a startup, because then you have really the pressure that you get users who want to use what you're building. Otherwise, you know, you're out of business very soon. So two things are different, and I hope it's going to help us to overcome these troubles. First of all, with the Blockchain Association, for example, in Germany, we managed to get blockchain into the German coalition agreement, which was very difficult to get. It took them over 4 months, and it wasn't even clear that we're going to have a government at all. But they could agree easily on that blockchain is going to be an enabling infrastructure for our societies. So there are open doors with respect to regulations, but of course we have to show them this is what we need, this is how it's going to play out. Ask for regulatory sandboxes, but they're ready to help. And the second thing is, as I tried to mention, maybe the business models are not going to be in the energy sector for the energy utilities. Most probably it's going to be over-the-top services. Like telecom industries still work, landlines work, but we have WhatsApp, we have Skype, we have over-the-top services, and these tokens allow making money in a different sector than in selling kilowatt hours. And to be honest, I was just telling, solar prices are dropping, zero-cost electricity. Blockchain helps us zero-cost transactions. So what are you going to make money on? Selling electricity, trading electricity?
Yeah.
No, you have to find something else, and I hope it's going to be in that regard that we're going to find another sector where we can monetize these valuable services.
Really, very, very good point.
That's what I also wanted to say. I think the biggest problem is that people, they just don't care. They just want to have cheap electricity, and they don't care where it comes from.
Exactly.
So I was thinking about maybe setting up a system where people who take more responsible energy, more renewable sources, maybe they get, they mine first or something like that. So maybe we should be more creative in ideas to develop the sources, and to maybe put those who are not caring about their energy sources behind those who care, who really care. So I think I'm not really deep into that topic, but I think that's the main idea, to first care, and second, maybe give, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so to carry on about your concern about the customer and the consumer caring, or if there's a pull from the market, what do you believe will be the application of distributed ledger technology that will win the early majority over? Is it tokenization?
I'm biased, obviously.
I don't think there will be one use case. For now, the companies are really testing. So they're like, I'm going to pick up peer-to-peer energy trading. I'm going to do a grid stabilization project. I'm going to do like a tokenization project or e-car. But for now, it looks like this. But I think there's not a race between the relevant use cases, but there will be business model considering different applications together. I think, for example, that blockchain can be a really interesting combination with artificial intelligence, where you can forecast the price of electricity, for example. That would be the use cases that we will see in the future, combining different use cases and application into one.
Interesting. Yeah. Anna, do you want to say something?
I don't know. No?
Okay.
I think it's okay. I think she
Great.
said everything. Mm.
Yeah, very good point. I also believe that it will be a mix and a lot of things happening at the same time, not one ruling out the other, but actually there's an interdependency even between the e-car, the e-mobility case, the peer-to-peer, and this system. I think that the use cases will be working together in the future. So we will see.
Like using synergies.
Yeah, exactly. So how has your view of blockchain in the field changed throughout these years?
I think it spread up to a lot of different business models. So it's not only Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It's now I heard about doctors, blockchain for doctors, where they can store patients' information, and it goes further and further, and it is spreading into all those different business sectors. I think that's the main change in my point of view.
Yeah.
I was, as I said, I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning, because I come from an energy business where everything is very structured, hierarchical, and we talk only about energy efficiency, so how we can reduce costs and not building a new business model, sadly. One of the main reasons why I changed also. But I was a little bit skeptical because of, not only because of the regulation, but also because of the infrastructure that we have today do not enable us a fully digitized system. Yeah. And we see again, I think it's true for blockchain, but it's true also for other digitization matters and topics, the technology is so far ahead from our organizations, our structures, our societies, and way to operate. But I changed a little bit, actually, my position when I realized that in some small pilot projects that we see today, that are active since 2015 right now, that the technology is valid, operates, people want to be part of it, that we integrate more renewable energies into the system, and we create also a new kind of economy, as we saw in Spectral and the examples that you give too. Yeah. So more optimistic than at the beginning.
Yeah.
Great.
So my biggest mistake was really thinking that I'm an expert in peer-to-peer systems. I was an expert in peer-to-peer computing, and when Bitcoin paper came along, I just said, what a horribly designed peer-to-peer protocol. Stupid. But I didn't get, for a long time, that it wasn't about efficient protocol design. They fixed a very, very important problem of digital business. Like, you can copy at zero cost, but with the blockchain you can track that value and you can make it, well, if you want, uncopyable. Okay, so you solve this double spend problem. So technically, I understood. I still don't understand Bitcoin, though. You know where the value comes from, but that's another question, problem. And on the other side was really, so my relearning what decentralization can mean with blockchain was more like the understanding, realization, okay, distributed ledger makes sense. You know, you have very different stakeholders across boundaries, organizational, geographical, and so on and so forth, and they can use this decentralized distributed ledger, and they can exchange value, understood. And then you go like, okay, and they have processes too, so if you have smart contracts, means you can automate really simple processes at once across organizational boundaries. In energy, we need that. So I understood smart contracts as well. And then you realize, okay, now these guys have to maintain a decentralized system. Why should they do it? Because they get a token. Okay, and that's, I think, the mindset change has been very similar to a lot of people entering this field from established domains. Like they get first DLT, smart contracts, and like token.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to come next, and I'm sure we're gonna change our perspectives and.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure as well. As we saw how, I mean, change has never happened faster and will be happening faster and faster. If I would connect to the value of Bitcoin and mining and blockchain, if I would say to all of the massive energy required to mine a Bitcoin, for example, and then how we are using Ethereum, I'm very curious to hear about. I mean, on one hand, we want mining to be happening at least with green energy. At the same time, how is this aligning with energy efficiency? And I'm also curious to hear more about what you believe in the future. Will we be able to have, I know that there are some distributed ledger technologies that don't require as much energy for mining, like the proof of authority concept. So if you would like to give us some take on that.
Of course, first of all, I think we need to, as I already said, we need to care. I will tell it to you 10 more times. We need to care. We need to know, okay, it takes a lot of energy and it will not drop. It will go up, and it will take more and more energy. So we need to improve our mining system, and maybe also as Vitalik is now working on this proof of stake system, I think we need to find also new ideas and not fix on what is the current situation. And I think the most important thing is that we care and that we start to have a look, okay, what is my mining rig consuming and what is the output? How can I handle that? How can I get more output with less electricity? And of course that needs time, and I think we are doing okay, but we could do better, I think, because as I know, like 60% of the people, they don't care, and this is the first problem. So let people care. Maybe, as I said, take those one who care, those one who have the more responsible miners, take them first, something like that. I don't know, it's all ideas, and it's somewhere, it's like a cloud, a creative cloud, but I think we need to optimize our miners to get less energy consumption. I think this is still possible nowadays, to really get the highest output with the lowest energy consumption we can have. So I think that's maybe the right path.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to that proof of work argumentation, at the beginning when Bitcoin was published, it was really all about transparency, decentralized system. I mean, there's no hotline where you can call Bitcoin and say, I have a problem with my Bitcoins. It's a fully decentralized system. So that was the idea, and I think it's also the idea of the mining itself. Of the miners competing between each other to validate blocks.
Right.
And that's what reaches actually the computing power that you need, and thus the energy that is required. And now we build systems like a proof of stake or a proof of authority that might not be that decentralized, because for proof of stake, for example, in Ethereum, it's actually the ones who have the most ether that validates the block. So it's not, I mean, it's similar to a big bank. But it's still going to change that problem, that issue that we have with the proof of work. I think one important thing that we need to do when we are part of that blockchain scene is to communicate transparently and officially about the limits of the technology itself and find solutions together that might be more suitable for a system or to another.
Yeah. So for the energy applications, proof of authority actually makes sense because we're not going to get the current system out of the way and build it new. And proof of authority where the regulators are, still have a say, it's a good transition for all involved. But it doesn't mean that, just because we have a low energy consuming solution for the energy sector, people are going to stop mining Bitcoins at cash and so on and so forth. So mining is going to be there. And I have a very different or ambiguous way to it. So first of all, I think it's crazy, like optimizing for energy consumption, and this thing is a machine, it just runs, and it runs by itself. It's not gonna stop because we don't have no more energy resources. It's gonna deplete everything because that's what Bitcoin runs on. But it's also, at the moment, actually the biggest market demand for renewable energy. And if you build a container, you put it in front of a huge wind park, then the grid operator doesn't have to curtail when there is too much excess electricity, but we can take that too much excess electricity that no one has use for and make it to money. Like energy to money, and then we have money over internet, then I have energy over internet, and that's the real disruption coming at us. Or at the energy stakeholders.
Definitely.
So I think this is interesting, but also for proof of stake, proof of authority, we don't know whether they're going to be able to give that security of no double spends.
Yeah.
So we know only Bitcoin blockchain works. And it works in a very energy inefficient way. So we have to find green mining is very important solution in the short term.
Exactly. We see cases actually of miners coming to Sweden for our low carbon and low CO2 emission electricity in order to be using that. So that's definitely very interesting, and there's a demand and there's a supply, so we will have to find this balance, of course. So now I'm thinking about with time, we have time to let in some questions from the audience. If you have any questions here? Yeah? Okay, two. Those are two.
Hey, thanks so much for all your talks. This question is really specifically for Ms. Gieselhart. So I guess the ideal of an autonomous device running on the blockchain, specifically for a smart meter, often contrasts with the realities of downloading a full node on that meter. So I'm wondering if the goal is supply-demand balance and not necessarily having an immutable record of energy purchases and sales, how do energy companies view the trade-offs between running blockchain or something more conventional like a distributed content delivery network type setup?
So first of all, light nodes are in reach. So I think that's a solution we can use for any IoT, any applications, any dApps in the IoT domain, not just smart grids and smart meter. But also, if we're not going to go for this fully decentralized financial and business model, we don't have to mess up with the current system. It's good enough. It's just not that economically efficient that you can bring the system to unelectrified places because it doesn't pay off to do it like this there. So Yeah, I wouldn't go for something in between because you have an SAP system, it works, accounting, billing, payment, these are things that work. You don't have to meddle with it unless you really want to go for decentralized business models for your decentralized energy system.
Yeah, especially, I mean, the case where that would be beneficial is if you have a huge network that you need to manage. If it's just you and the customer, then why have a distributed ledger for that? And also another aspect that came up in the Blockchangers hackathon is really taking care of what to put on the blockchain, because it's immutable. And with the EU rights of GDPR coming up, you always have the right to be forgotten, so it needs to really be encrypted and anonymized in that case, and that could be quite complicated. So that's something to be careful what to put on, what you will be able to put on the blockchain.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah,
exactly.
There was one more question over there.
Yeah, I had a question about the proof of work. You're saying its energy consumption is a bit high, but if you compare it to the bank system and the fiat systems,
Very good point.
how is it against that?
Yeah,
Good point.
I absolutely agree. And when it comes to that energy consumption proof of work story, I've read every day another consumption. Like one day it was the entire energy consumption of Norway, and the other day it was Copenhagen. So we do not really know the source. We do not know exactly how much energy consumption it really represents. So that's the first aspect. The other aspect, it's also a matter of energy efficiency. And if you have a lot more renewable energy in the system, it changes a little bit also how we see energy consumption.
Yeah.
It's the other aspect. And of course, all the industries that are producing money, they produce a lot more electricity, they consume a lot more energy than what is needed for a proof of work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also, for example, training algorithms, deep learning, it's such a wasteful way of training. You know, it's also wasteful. You know, you do a bunch of additional multiplications all over time, and the models run for weeks, non-stop, on data centers of the scale of Google. So that burns a lot of money. I don't know how much the banking system does, but I'm sure this is as comparably much like the mining system. No one talks about that. But at the same time, Google and co, those are already also seeing the zero cost potential of renewable energy, and all of them have switched their electricity source to renewables. They build their own energy parks and so on and so forth. It's the same trend we see with the green mining. So, as I said, I'm ambiguous. Actually, it's new demand for renewables, so that's a good thing, but still, it's a bit tricky.
Okay. One last question.
I wanted to ask a question regarding the project Lutricity. Was it supposed to be working on grid or as an off-grid, microgrid?
For now, we still have the on-grid aspect. So we still have the DSO, the distribution system operator, but the objective is to be independent from the higher grid level. We still have, of course, to be in contact with the higher grid level, so the TSO needs our information in case we do not have enough renewables to feed that microgrid. But the objective is that, and still connected to the DSOs.
So you will separate the lower grid from the higher grid?
From the higher grid,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. One last question from me is, but we were talking about our vision and how it's really a technology for changing things, and a bit like, if you could just tell us a little bit about what your vision is for the future and how we could bridge the gap between the existing infrastructure and the decentralized vision for the future.
I
I think you will hear that in my presentation after my point of view. So I think I don't need to repeat that twice. So I think if you stay here, you will have my point of view.
Great, thank you.
You mean to fill the gap between the infrastructure and the technology?
Yeah, because what we see is that what is needed to implement blockchain technologies, there's a gap there because we have a completely different built-up backend from the beginning. So how can we bridge this gap? Is it possible, or does it need to be developed separately, like the cryptocurrency market has been developed separately from banks, for example?
I think we need an infrastructure as a whole that is way more digitized, and for that, as you mentioned, also we need to talk with the Bundesverband. I don't know what's the term in English. It's that association, that blockchain association that we have in Germany, where they're able to build sandboxes, giving the opportunity to test things. But the first aspect is we need a way more digitized infrastructure to be at all able to build blockchain-based business models.
Thank you. I agree.
So it's very difficult to say where it's going to be in 5 years. So my favorite scenario would be, for example, the Sun protocol we built for rural villages in Africa as open source, and then people can just use it here for their solar homes or villages and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden we have permissionless, decentralized energy that pays off. And it's just there, and it's good, so people use it. That would be my, favorite scenario.
Thank you. Okay, that wraps up our panel here. I have a small Trezor hardware wallet for you guys to thank you for your participation.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we still have now one more presentation to look forward to see. But first, I would like us to take a picture of our panel.
I think it's
Also
female
with the crowd, can we take a
Yes,
stage
we should
selfie?
Because you think
Because
it's the last
it's the-
woman panel ever, that's why? Or
No, but maybe it's the first. So we should document
But
it.
also it was the biggest crypto energy crowd I had the pleasure to sit down with, so thank you guys.
Great.